It is a pleasure to come into your homes, but coming into your homes is with a focus. And that focus is no different than what people had in the scriptures of seeing God's ministry progress, multiply, and become dynamic around the world. The reason why it was like that for them is because they recognized what God did for them, how God ministered to their hearts, how God touched their lives, how God responded to them in the most difficult times of their lives. And they wanted other people to have the same thing. Like Paul was saying, Philippians chapter 2, look to put the mind of Christ in our minds by renewing our minds so that the blessings for others never leaves our hearts. That's what we find with these Macedonians today and how they serve Paul in one of the most difficult times of his life when he's struggling with people threatening to kill him, but yet believing God wants to use him. So stay tuned to this message so that we maintain God's agenda no matter what we are facing, no matter what difficulties we're going through, we maintain God's agenda for His glory and His honor. Thanks for allowing us this privilege. Stay tuned. Things are done with purpose. God doesn't just gather us for us to spend every Sunday talking about what we need. God gathers us every Sunday to trust Him that He will supply our needs according to His riches and glory when we focus on His agenda. And that's what we find with this church in Macedonia. So I want us to go to 2 Corinthians because I want you to see what kind of church this was that keeps running Paul down wherever he goes. They don't have no GPS systems. They don't have no Instagrams. They don't have all these satellite stuff. They just decided to run Paul down simply because of what God put on their heart to do. And if it wasn't for these people, Paul could not do ministry the same way. He would have to make tents and sell the tents in order to survive in ministry. If you got to go make tents and do ministry, guess what you're doing? Less ministry, because you got to go make the tents, sell the tents, get the money. Then when you get the money, then you go do ministry. So it's less time to do ministry if the person doing ministry got to work. So when these people go to the furthest means to find a way to take care of where Paul does is because these people were so sold out, they enrich God's kingdom and they enrich themselves. And I want you to see how God does this. I want you to, when we hopefully we have time to take you to how God responds to those who hoard their money and they don't want to keep God's kingdom plan going. He said doesn't talk nice about those people in 1 Timothy 6. Because God is not gassing us up so that we could be rich and wonderful and great and don't think about His kingdom plan. He does not. So that's the reason why He blesses us the way He does. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, it says, these are the kind of people these people were. He says, now brethren, we wish to make known to you the grace of God, which had been given to the churches of Macedonia, that in a great ordeal of affliction, their abundance of joy and their deep poverty overflowed in the wealth of their liberality. Did it say deep poverty? Deep poverty. Deep poverty. It overflowed in the wealth. What a contrast. What an oxymoron. In the wealth of their liberality. For I testify that according to their ability and beyond their ability, they gave of their own accord, begging us with much urging for the favor of participation in the support of the saints. That's the people we're reading about in Philippians. It is these people who understood what God had done for them. Watch verse 1. They see what God has done for them. They're not Jews, they are Gentiles, which means that God sent Paul, called Paul to go to who? Gentiles. So they would have only heard the message that Paul sent since God thought about them, and as a result of God thinking about them, they were able to go out and hear this message that God sent through Paul. Because God sent Paul to the Gentiles. They are Gentiles. If God did not touch Paul, they wouldn't hear a message. So look at what they said in verse 1. Now, brethren, we wish to make known to you the grace of God, which has been given to the churches of Macedonia, the grace, the gift of God, the free gift of God that they never earned was generously given to this people in Macedonia. And because they experienced the grace of God in that powerful way, they became so excited, so enthused about what God has done for them, that they refused to just think about themselves and what happened for them. They refused to do it. And they decided in their poverty, to track Paul down to say, keep doing this for everybody else. We will not let you go about all this world, go through all you're going through in this world. Where did they find Paul in Philippians? Under house arrest. Talking about killing him. They found him. They sought him out. And watch what he says. No church did like you did. No church. No church. In other words, Paul is going to all these churches. Thessalonica, a church, he said, is a model unto God. And guess what? They didn't give to Paul. He served them. He brought them to Christ. They never thought to do anything. They said a church that would do this is a church that was sold out to him. A church that recognized that God reached them, that touched them because he touched Paul. So they were dedicated to get this done. Watch this carefully how sold out they were. Because they were more into the vision of God than their own needs. And as a result of that, by the end of this passage, God says, I enriched them. I enriched them. Because they were sold out to my agenda, I have more reasons to put gas in their tank. I got more reasons to keep their battery charged up for their car. I got more reason to make sure their tires don't wear out. I got more reason to make sure that their homes don't fall apart. Because the more I sustain these people is the more blessings I receive to bless Paul. So if I hoard up my money, he says, well, then live by it. Live by it. If it runs out, you run out. Look at what he says here in Philippians. These people were sold out. Look at how they were sold out. You yourselves also know. He says, you've experienced this in verse 15 of Philippians chapter 4. You know. You experience what I'm talking about. Philippians, Macedonians, that at the first preaching of the gospel that I left Macedonia, no church shared with me. I love what he means by share here. No church had a deep, I wish you could see this word in the Greek and what it means. It doesn't mean share in the sense that I got a loaf of bread, I'm going to give half. That's what it means. It means, the word actually means pay a debt. In other words, God sent you to us because God chose to go to the Gentiles. And if God didn't send you to us, we would be doomed for hell. We would have no hope to ever be in heaven. What God is doing for us, we would have no chance of doing this. So because of that, we owe God a debt. He went on Calvary's cross and paid a price for us when we weren't thinking about him. If you look at the Gentiles at the cross, they were the ones nailing the nails. The Jews were the ones that got him there, but they were the ones nailing the nails. They were the Romans that are ripping his gown apart and gambling over it. They were the ones who put a sword in his side. So we were the ones that, along with the Jews, that condemned them. But Christ said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So we, as a result, are being blessed because he stayed on this cross. Everybody neglecting him except John, his mama, and Mary Magdalene, a few people sitting at the 4 people at the cross. Everybody else is mocking him, laughing at him, and he still be about his Father's business. So we owe him a debt. And we can't go on the cross and die, but we could take the little we got and make sure that other people hear the gospel just like he took the time to get the gospel to us. So the word share is not just, okay, you got $5, let's split it. The word share means I got a debt. So every time, watch this carefully, every time these people go in their fields and plow their fields, every time an animal gives birth, they were figuring out in that structure how they pay their debt. Just like we go to work and we work hard and we figure out from our budget how we're going to pay a debt. They are working in the fields thinking of how they pay a debt because they couldn't keep working in these fields if it didn't rain. Couldn't keep working in the fields if they didn't have health and strength. They couldn't keep working in the fields. I know that when they die, they go to heaven. If it wasn't for God. So we're going to work these fields with a debt in mind. That's why they didn't need somebody to tell them to give to Paul. They need somebody to run them down and tell them to do this for Paul. They would find Paul wherever he is, no matter what church wasn't given to him, and make sure it happened. See, that's why I don't like a bunch of fuss about giving. Somebody got to jump up and down and make you give. You're not giving. See, giving doesn't require pushing. It requires the heart of the person seeing the giver and wanting to bless that giver. Come to 2 Corinthians. This is these kind of people. This is the kind of people. Paul is writing to 2 Corinthians to correct the people who ain't giving. Because the Macedonians was his example of what you do when you don't give. In Corinth, they ain't giving. He's sending Timothy to collect an offering because they hadn't done anything. He's telling them the first day of every week, by the time you get to chapter 16, this is what you must do. When you get out, you set this in your mind because it's a debt to pay. You don't have somebody telling you nothing. You are ready to do this. But the people he's writing to are the people who don't want to do this. So he's saying this to them in verse 6 of chapter 9. Now this I say, he who sows sparingly would also reap sparingly. He who sows bountifully would also reap bountifully. Who's he comparing that with? The people in chapter 8 who in verse 2 who are giving, he says, that a great ordeal of affliction. They didn't give when things were good. Their abundance of joy and their deep poverty overflowed with the wealth of their liberality. The contrast is the Corinth people. Don't give sparingly. Don't give, verse 7, grudgingly. Verse 7, don't give with a grudging heart. Don't give under compulsion. You got some people in Macedonia giving liberally. They're giving when they're in affliction. They're giving when they're broke. That's the contrast. So folks, they were sold out. Are we really sold out for God? Or are we so sold out to ourselves that we want God to bless us in the city, bless us in the fields, bless us when we come and when we go? Are we so sold out to ourselves if God doesn't bless us based on how we see a blessing, we can't focus on how his kingdom move forward? That's why it gets me excited to say today. Many of you have. Many of you have given to Rwanda. Many of you given so we could take this trip to Rwanda to start with. Not just Power Walk puts money in there, whatever little money we got in Power Walk. Also the church. So we're not just giving to the Rwanda University. We have to pay for all of the pastors that come. We feed them, pay for them to stay in a place. Because they leave their fields and their families and they come, the countryside of Africa. They're the ones that are taking the message to the world. What about those Pastor Websters in Guyana? What about them? While we fight over what I don't have and what's bothering me, and how come I don't have this money, why I got to drive this car. That's why he's saying here, he says, you of all the churches, the poorest one, the most brokest, you keep chasing me down just because of what God did for you through the ministry. How God blessed you through the ministry. How you see your life better because of the ministry. You chased me down when no other church did. That's why they were sold out. That's why he says this in verse 16. For even in Thessalonica, the church that is a model church in how they serve, how they work hard, he says, you sent a gift there. More than once, you kept tracking me. They were sold out. Folks, living word. I will teach this. That's why I'm not saying you don't bless the pastor. That's going to be sinful. Galatians chapter 6, it says you bless the person who teaches you. I wouldn't do that because I'm not, like Paul is going to say now, I didn't do it for me. It's not about me. That's why I don't do a lot of things about me, because it gets twisted, this giving. It just gets messed up. People can't see giving anymore. But it is sinful if I don't teach you that giving to a pastor is very biblical. It's Galatians 6. Read it for yourself. But I don't teach all that stuff and push all that stuff because it's been so much mess attached to it. I don't want this thing to be messed up because then it messes you up. Watch what he's saying here. Look at verse 17. He says, not that I seek a gift. I'm not here fighting all of the word. It's funny how he puts this word. The word seek here means I'm doing everything possible to constantly reach out to figure out ways to get money from you. He says, I'm not doing that. I'm making it a habit to figure out how I can make you get stuff. Then I'm messing up your blessing. Then I'm a corrupt preacher, 2 Peter says. Peter said, and then I'm violating the very text I'm writing in 1 Timothy 3, that I can't be a lover of money as a pastor. He says, I'm not seeking. This is not a personal thing. Look at what Paul is saying. Look at verse, because it's about this kingdom work of God. Here's this key word. But I seek for the profit which increases your account. Because right before this, Paul says, I've learned contentment. I've learned contentment. I've learned to go with much. I've learned to go with little. So I've learned contentment. So if you don't give to me, I'm good. I could go back to working tents. He says it is for your profit. So Paul puts this into banking terms because they're saying we have a debt. So since it's a debt, let's talk banking. That's what Paul is saying. So how is this a profit? Go to Luke chapter 6. I'm glad you asked. The Bible actually has your money as an account in heaven. You have an account in heaven. So everybody has an account in heaven. Look at Luke chapter 6. You would see this in Luke chapter 6, and then we're going to work our way. As a matter of fact, I read you Proverbs chapter 3 today. And it's a precursor to this message. So you could see that he would literally say, I will make your vats full based on what you do. Look at verse 38. He says, give, and it shall be given unto you. Pour down into your lap with good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return. So we could think, that's why the Bible says you can't rob God. It's impossible to rob him. Because every time he has our name in heaven with an account, whatever we put in that account, he puts back to us, shake down. So in other words, why the vats overflow, for Proverbs chapter 3. The vats overflow. Why is he saying that? Because he says, I don't just give it back to you. I'm God. So I don't have to give you back a penny because you give me a penny. I ain't need no penny. Not like I'm running on money up here in heaven. I don't have no money up here in heaven. I just pour it back to you. It's shake down, press down, running over. Why? Because I don't just give you money back. I give you health back so you don't spend your money. I make sure your car don't break down so you don't spend your money. I make sure your house don't fall apart so you don't spend your money. I make sure that your kids do well so they get scholarships to go to college so you don't spend your money. I find ways to bring your money back to you so you hold on to what you got so you can invest it the way you want. I take care of you, but I do it based on what your account says in heaven. Who he's talking to? Just people? No, everybody. The church. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 9. It says in verse 10, he says, for he who supplies the seed to the sower, he is the giver, and bread for food, will supply and multiply your seed for sowing. Watch this carefully. For what? Sowing. Not for hoarding. For sowing. And increase the harvest of your what? Righteousness. You start to live more dependent on him because we're now living by faith and not by sight. So now I'm depending on him to bring me a harvest. I'm depending on him that when I go to sow, there's stuff to sow. So because I'm living by faith and not by sight, my righteousness increases. I'm more conscious of God, more in need of God, more surrendered to God because I need him because I'm giving him the best. He says this, you will be enriched in what? I want to hear you say it. Come on. Can I hear you? Everything. Your kids, everything. your house, everything. The doctors could tell you ain't going to live. He still keeps you living, everything. He will enrich you in everything because you choose to let his kingdom plan move forward for his glory, for his honor. Because of that, he says, I will enrich you because you choose to share in the blessings. I bless you, you bless. I bless you, you bless. I bless you, you bless. So since you share in these blessings, I keep you blessed. Because when I look at your account, I don't just give you back $5. I shake it together. I make it run over because I am God. I don't have to be exact. Because the more I give to you is the more we share in these blessings. But it becomes a profit to you because when I give it to you, I shake it. I make it run over. That's why it's profitable. Look at what he says. Look at 1 Timothy. Come on. Let's turn to another channel. And look at verse 6. He says, this leads to your profit because I've received what I need in full. I honestly, because I'm so content, what you give me is good. Because I could now go and do the work of God. Folks, you have to understand, this actually makes no sense. It actually makes no sense. No sense at all. You say, what do you mean? They're talking about killing Paul. They're talking about killing Paul. He said, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. Right here in Philippians, for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. Paul, they're not talking about you living. Paul is saying, until my God tell me I'm going to die, I'm going to keep planning on living. I don't plan on dying. I keep planning on living. Dying is easy, you know. When the time comes, you're gone. Living is what's hard. I focus on living, not dying. I'm not running around every day trying to stay alive. I run around every day because I am alive. And the Bible is saying that Paul is saying, hey, I'm not worried about that. They could talk, I'm under house arrest writing to you. I can't get out of here because these Jews keep trying to kill me. And Paul is walking around going, hey. But this leads to a shared blessing that blesses the kingdom of God. So we carry out the work of God. Paul, you're crazy. No, I'm not crazy. God sent you. I still got work to do. But for those who say, no, God, I'm going to make this on my own. You got the rich man in Luke 12. And this is what he says to the other folks in 1 Timothy 6, verse 17. Instruct those who are rich in this present world not to be conceited, or to fix their hope on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly supplies us with all things to enjoy. Instruct them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, to be generous and ready to share, storing up for themselves the treasure. In other words, when they get to heaven, God still looks at this account and says, oh man, you have a lot of money in this account. He says, of good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is life indeed. Because riches are uncertain. Didn't we figure that out during the virus? That's why he says, go back to Philippians. He says, when I bless you, because you stayed with my agenda, and as a preacher, you didn't go messing up making it your personal agenda. Paul says, I didn't make it personal. It's not about me. It's about him. He says, when he goes to Philippians chapter 4, you go down to verse 18, he says, God is so blessed. Do you know what this does to God? You know what a sweet-smelling aroma is? It's perfume. God says, when we walk into church and we start praising his name and worshiping him, he says, oh, man, that is such a sweet-smelling perfume to me. What made you pleasant when you walked into my sanctuary is the fact that you honored my death on Calvary's cross. Because on Calvary's cross I said, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten Son, so that whosoever believes in him shall be saved. You did not forget I'm after the world. When you gathered, you blessed my name by making sure the world can be reached. And because you did that, oh man, now you are a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable as your reasonable act of worship. Only now. That's why he says, because you such a sweet-smelling aroma to me, the Lord will supply your needs according to what? His riches. God is saying, I'll supply your needs. But who's he talking to? Macedonians who are sold out. Who's he talking to? Macedonians who will share. They're going to their crop and they're bigging up their crop thinking of, hey, I got to get this crop together and I got to make sure my fields are good because if I don't sell this crop, I can't help Paul. They got it on their mind. He's talking about people who, without GPS and Facebook and all this stuff, will find Paul because they're sold out. Man, when you're going along the road, you need food. I got your needs. When you're planting your fields, you got to have crop. I got your needs. I'll send rain. When you're going out to the fields, there are people out there. There could be locusts come and eat your crop. There could be birds come and eat your crop. I'm going to keep the birds and the locusts away because you need to get that crop to come to life. So I'm going to take care of your needs. See, when you're going along and you're taking an offering for Paul, I got to make sure robbers don't get you. So I'll protect you when you're on the streets, when you're moving around. I got to make sure nobody touch you because you're carrying an offering to Paul to get this thing done. So I got to protect you. So I supply your needs. He's not talking about me walking around saying I need shoes. What are these shoes taking you? So we quote that verse, God will supply my needs. Where did the need come from? Because I went spending? Now I'm broke? You sure need me. But I don't see nothing in this account. You ain't broke because of me. So that's your need. That ain't my need. And that's why you find people in this text are enriched while others are suffering. It's not because God doesn't care. It's because God is saying, I supply what you lack. I'm a gracious God. So long you stay on the agenda of God and do what God says, He promised you to supply your needs according to His riches and glory. You are enriched doing His agenda. I pray that this message has touched your life in the way that we have prayed it will. And I pray that God will use it to not just touch it in this moment, it will use it to shape your life, to experience the victory that can be a blessing to other people. I pray that you would also support Power Walk Ministries in our year-end appeal. As it comes to the end of the year, it could also help you in your taxes, that it will be a blessing if you would support our ministry with $25 or more. We will send you our newest book, The Making of the Disciples, and I pray that God would use that book to touch your life. It sounds like a book that for a small discipleship class in a church, and it is designed that way as well, with a teacher's manual and a student manual, but it is to help a person go from spiritual infancy to spiritual maturity. How you get past the sin issues? How do you deal with just learning what the fruit of the Spirit looks like? What is the process that God used in moving our lives to spiritual maturity? When it gets there, what does it look like? So I pray that for $25 or more, you will support this ministry because we're seeking to do God's will across the globe. And I know that this will be a blessing for His kingdom purposes as we continue to serve Him. We thank you for listening, and we pray that you'll continue to pray for us. And may God bless you and your family. Stay focused.